So hey Robin, thank you so much for coming today, as I know you have a busy schedule. My idea behind these videos is to create a resource for rainbow adolescents that they can access and see that they are normal and it's okay. So what was your education growing up and what is your occupation now?
I finished high school, I think that was in 1982, a while back, and I went straight to university where I studied architecture, and I graduated with a Bachelor of Architecture. And I worked as an architect in South Africa and in Sydney for a while, and I moved up to the Sunshine Coast about 10 years ago, and I work here as a building designer.
Okay. And I hear that you're in the Australian Sex Party. That is a bit of an unusual name, so could you explain how it got that name and what it's about?
Well, I think the name was used to catch people's attention, and it certainly has worked doing that. Everyone knows about the Sex Party now. Yeah. There are talks at the moment about perhaps changing the name, so if anyone has a good alternative name for the Sex Party, let us know.
What made you want to get into the Australian Sex Party and become a politician?
I started off looking at all the parties in Australia when I first moved here, and the Greens caught my attention right at the beginning. But I've always been a little bit disappointed with their policies, and when I read the Sex Party's policies, they really caught my attention, and it closely aligned with the things that I believe in. The issues around dying with dignity, taxing the church, their abortion rights issues, drug law reform, all these resonated strongly with me, and that's why I decided to join that party. And when Tony Abbott and Campbell Newman came onto the scene, that drove me crazy, because they were so right-wing, so reactionary, that I thought I had to do something. And that's when I decided to pursue politics more strongly. Yeah, that's correct. Well, it wasn't really a conscious decision to become a politician, just to become more involved with politics. And as a result, I ran for Senate in the last federal election.
That's good. Do you think being a rainbow person has affected your political or architecture career?
Architecture, not so much. I think every second architect's probably gay. But politically, I would also say so. The Sex Party is the queerest party out of all the political parties in Australia. And I think everyone who's part of that party identifies as queer in some way or other. And so, you know, with Labor you have Rainbow Labor groups, and with the Greens you have Green Rainbow. But with the Sex Party, everyone's in it together, and it just feels like one big family. There's no need to separate out into different groups.
That's really good.
Yeah. So in terms of politics, I do feel that being gay has strongly influenced my politics. You know, I grew up in South Africa as a white male, and if I'd been a white male heterosexual, I think my view on this world could have been different. But being gay made me look at the world through different eyes, and you started to realize that your oppression and racism, sexism, they all interlinked somehow, and it certainly helped me form a more general overview of what discrimination is about, and that's what encouraged me to become involved with politics.
In terms of your sexuality, how do you identify yourself?
I'm gay, but I would also call myself a little bit queer as well.
Okay. When did you first know you were gay?
That happened when I was very young. I reckon it was around 4 years old. And I can tell you what happened. I was on the beach one day, and one of my school teachers was in a Speedo. I still remember, being very curious. And I think my mother actually noticed, and she said, "Robin, stop looking." So she was aware of it too when I was very young. So,
And she was supportive?
I came out when I was at university, early on in university, and initially, for example, my father was not supportive at the time, but slowly he changed his views. My mother has always been accepting. I was very lucky to meet a wonderful man when I first moved to Sydney, and we've been together 10 years now. And my father passed away last year, but both my parents got to know Neil, and they both liked him a lot, and so that's one way that I know being gay has been no problem for my parents.
That's really good. So what was it like being a rainbow teenager growing up in South Africa?
It was difficult. It was during the time of apartheid, so South Africa had a rather strange kind of environment at that time. There was a civil war going on at that time as well. I was conscripted into the army. I decided not to go. I grew up in the city where I studied at university. There were bombs going off at times, and it was a very strange environment. So being gay kind of took almost second place to a lot of things at the time. But I think in the white community in South Africa, it was much easier being gay. Although it was illegal at the time and the police did harass people, people were kind of left alone. So it had its hard. It was hard at the time. You know, I think there was a lot of bullying at school, and you know, people didn't accept it in general, and it was kind of hidden away undercover most of the time. But you know, South Africa was one of the first countries in the world to, well, it was the first country in the world to actually have in its constitution that it was illegal to discriminate against someone for their sexuality.
That's really good.
And that allowed South Africa to become one of the first countries in the world to have marriage equality as well.
That's really good.
So it was the whole history of South Africa and the apartheid and the change of government and what happened subsequent to the end of apartheid I think had a lot of positive effects for gay and lesbian people. But I would say today, growing up in South Africa, especially if you're black, that's going to be very hard, because it seems like there's less tolerance in black culture for being gay at the moment, and especially lesbians. They run a terrible risk of corrective rape, as it's called, and quite a few lesbians have been murdered recently as well.
So sad. When did you have your first serious gay relationship?
That's a good question. I think all my initial relationships were relatively short term. And you know, they on and off, they lasted a year and a half. And so I never really got into a long-term relationship until recently, until 10 years ago when I met Neil.
And in your opinion, what are the differences between Africa and here, according to the views of the rainbow community?
You're talking about the community itself, within the community?
No, the views of the rainbow community.
from people outside the community.
Yeah.
Well, I first came to Australia I think it was about 15 years ago for Mardi Gras, and that opened my eyes. I had such a great time. Just to see the streets in Sydney full of people having fun, celebrating the fact that they're gay and lesbian. Speaking to the people in Sydney, it just felt like a whole new world for me. You know, my view has changed actually since I've moved to Australia. I've realised that bigotry and intolerance is everywhere in the world. Religion is everywhere in the world, and of course that often dictates those kind of issues. I would say it's pretty similar in South Africa and here. But as I said before, I think our shared European history often dictates the way we view gay and lesbian culture. But I think the indigenous culture in South Africa is not, as I said, is a lot less tolerant. And you know, I must admit, I haven't found that here at all with the indigenous people of Australia. Yeah, it's pretty. I'd say there's similarities and there are differences. Yeah.
I heard recently you went on a trip overseas, and what was the sentiment like over there, seeing like Trump's stirring up a bit of ruckus at the moment?
Yes, we went skiing in Canada in February, a few months ago. Trump, people were kind of reluctant to talk about him, but they were. The Americans that we met were kind of embarrassed about the whole thing. But what I really noticed that really stood out for me was a lot of the people we met at Gay Ski Week were talking about their weddings or their husbands. And every time they talked about those things, it really hurt me, because I realized here we are in Australia.
We don't have that.
We don't have that yet. And you could see that the joy and the pleasure and the love when they were talking about these things. And we are supposed to be in this democracy, liberal democracy, and yet that's denied to the people of this country.
Even though the people want it.
Yes, the majority of Australians want it, and somehow it doesn't translate through to the parliamentarians.
Somehow. So thank you so much again for being a part of this interview.
It's my pleasure, and thanks for inviting me.